But with our engine, we pull all the data into the client browser and we do all the queries locally in the browser itself. So every time we change, like, let's say we move a slider from 1979 for a year to 2014, and it renders the result, it does it for the same. Because you already have the data in your browser. So it's, from a query perspective, in terms of querying data, it queries locally, so it's naturally decentralized. It's highly compressed, so it's actually very small. So because our compression algorithm is able to bring a lot of data very small, which is what makes it like super valuable for decentralized applications. You'd be able to pull down all the data to run an auger or run a dash in your browser without needing to go download the full blockchain. Or even a light client, which is like a couple of gigabytes in 8 hours. Yeah, and most people more often than not might not have the space on the computer to do that, so you're able to access to audio. Yes. So we have EOS integration or Ethereum integrations on this phone, but we're planning to have that interface where you can mix data from different blockchains, so you could create totally new application experiences that uses data. So we would be agnostic to where the data is coming from. So it would sort of create this new, it would be a new foundation for developers to sit on in terms of getting access to blockchain data that OST is also like. It's really hard to do it. We make that process super easy. So like every day we show is pretty much like, oh shit, this is awesome. We can't do this yet. So what we believe the engine will enable is a totally new class of decentralized applications that are faster and more performant and cheaper to run than traditional applications today that everyone uses. People in the future will use decentralized applications. They'll just be better in performance in every way, shape, or form. But like people won't know that they're decentralized applications. It's like, I mean, they might. It'll be like when an electric car is so fast. Is what dApps will do. Our engine is like basically the flywheel to help accelerate decentralized apps towards that future. But then there's a lot of like nitty-gritty specifics around like the technicals of like how the engine works. Some people are asking us, and Graham will give the pitch, but essentially we're improving access to decentralized data while maintaining the trustlessness of the data, so that you know the data you get is not contaminated. There's no intermediaries or someone that's like touching the data or doing whatever. In terms of
Okay, thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to use the mic actually. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Good, super. Thanks everyone for coming. Come in, take a seat. Are you guys okay back there? Don't heckle from the sidelines, please. So, welcome. Welcome to the very first of 2019, the Austin Blockchain Collective monthly community meetup. My name is Pete Harris. I run the Austin Blockchain Collective with a couple of other people. And we've got, we run these meetups every single month. On the third Monday of every month, there'll be a little bit of info about that on a couple of slides. Yeah, let's jump into it. If you don't know, who knows about the Austin who does not know here about the Austin Blockchain Collective? Put your hands up. Excellent. One person. Okay, please leave the room, please. Thank you. Okay. Go to the website, austinblockchaincollective.com. Follow us on Twitter. Find us on Medium and LinkedIn. If you go to our website, you get links to everything, so it's easier to do, and you'll find out what we're about. But for those who just need a refresher, our mission and approach is we are here to put Austin on the global blockchain map, and we should be, because there are currently listed on our website 125 companies and projects related to blockchain and crypto, which is really pretty great, I think. Who'd have thunk it? We're going to put Austin on the global blockchain map by helping all of those companies. We're going to help them. We're going to advocate for. We're going to try and make their lives easier. We're going to showcase what they're doing. We're going to nurture them, which means we're going to help them along the way. And these are all companies involved in either blockchain sort of enterprise, blockchain platforms, or crypto assets, cryptocurrency projects in Austin. We have, as I say, about 125 companies who are, quotes, members, basic members, which is very easy to be because it's free and we do things for you for nothing. However, a handful right now of companies have been very visionary and said we want to help you and underpin what you're doing either in kind or financially, and these are the companies we have on board today, and we are actively bringing on some more companies and actively looking for even more companies because we really do need to kind of be underpinned financially and with people helping us. And what's gone wrong here? Does anyone know what's gone wrong?
Someone looks like they pulled up the menu for the Apple TV.
Oh,
Do you
dear.
have the Apple TV remote somewhere?
Yeah. Although I'm going to do that again and see what that happens again. Okay. Hopefully this will not go wrong again. Where was I? Okay, yeah, begging for money. Yeah, so very definitely looking for more partners to help in terms of underpinning our mission, and we actually help those companies more and more as well as they help us. So if you want to know about what it means to be a supporter or a patron like these companies, and what it means for you financially or in kind and what you get out of it, I'm the person to ask. End of plea. The agenda for tonight is a few notices and shout-outs. Shout-outs are essentially you people getting up and saying something. A couple of presentations tonight. We always have a feature presentation, and we augment that either with an opener presentation or a couple of short presentations. So that's going to be kind of the format, I think, for going forward this year. Kind of a diverse mix of presentations. One opening one very much focused on, if you like, the enterprise market, and the other one I think featured more on the kind of community blockchain, public blockchain market. Lots of room, time for afterwards for chatting, getting to know one another, maybe getting a drink downstairs. So just two or three notices from me about things going on. Meetup. So yeah, our own meetup will be continuing throughout 2019. It will always be the third Monday of every month. Having said that, there's a chance our event in July might be a joint event with another group in Austin. But right now, third Monday of every month here in this room. And that's the link at meetup.com to find out all about it. You can, if you go to our website, there are links to our meetup area, our medium area as well. If you quickly want to find out a bit more about what we're about in terms of mission, how we're going to go about fulfilling that mission, and the things we're practically going to be doing kind of every day in a week, there's a page on the website. It's only like the second page on the website called Mission, Activities and Channels. Go there, take a read of it. If you need to know more, contact us and we'll fill you in. Yeah, the other sort of big thing we've got going on right now is we are rebooting to, for want of a better word, our healthcare working group, which is something we got going about in the middle of last year. A group of companies here in Austin who are either into blockchain and healthcare applications or into broad applications that clearly had a role to play in healthcare. We got together in a conference room at Dell Medical School and kind of just said hello to one another. And we did that a couple of times, and we realized that we all knew each other then. But we did a couple of useful things last year. We got a couple of our companies sort of inducted into the Dell Medical School UT Healthcare Catalyst Accelerator, which kind of helps out innovative tech healthcare players navigate the healthcare system here in Austin and the state. So we did that for a couple of companies, and also working with Dell Medical School, we ran a webinar essentially for Dell Medical School to tell them what we knew as a group about blockchain as it related to HIPAA regulations. So they got something out of it, we got something out of it. We sat down with Dell Medical School towards the end of last year and kind of said, well, we've done this thing, we've tried it, we seem to think there's a value to it, and we're going through a process right now of kind of figuring out what we're really going to be doing in 2019. We've put some things down on paper, or actually on Google Docs. We've shared it with a few people. We've got people's feedback already. We are actively chatting along the way to Dell Medical School about what they want to do. They definitely see value in working with us as a group, because they're a very formidable healthcare educational organization, and they see the merit of working with our organization and the members in it. So they want to do something, we want to do more, and so we're actually actively chatting about exactly what more things we're going to be doing this year together. If anyone here in the room is saying that sounds like it could be interesting for me, again, contact me, because we can share that document with you. You can give us your 2 cents now rather than when we've figured something out. Okay, almost at the presentations, but something we do every meetup is just to invite people on the floor to get up and give any brief shout outs. These are typically things of saying, I'm so-and-so, I'm working on this project, can anyone help? Or I'm hiring people, or I'm doing this thing and maybe you want to check out my website. We generally do not like people getting up and saying, I'm so-and-so, I'm looking for money, I'm looking for coins, I'm doing whatever flavor of the month an ICO is these days. But anyone got anything to say about anything that they are doing, want to do, want help with, etc., etc., etc.? Use the mic if you can. I'll try and bring it to you.
Usually it rings about there. Okay. But it's not on. That's probably. It's on? Okay. The Technology Advisors Group, which meets once a month, on the last Friday of the month. This month we'll have Mitch Jacobson. He is the director of the Austin Technology Incubator. Talk about a topic known as deep tech. And I would assert that many of you may not know it, but anyway, you are in deep tech. It's an entirely different type of startup than you have with people with new lifestyles and a fancy way to do financial planning or do your books. Forget the planning part. But there's mathematics involved in blockchain, and mathematics is definitely a deep tech type of subject when it's at the beginning, at the end of science and going into commercialization. Tagaustin.org, or I have for the forgetful little reminder sheets. Thanks.
When is that? Oh.
Yeah, it's Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning, but I think you guys can do it, looking around. And it's up at the, just below the 360 bridge, just south of the 360 bridge.
Good, thank you. So was there someone else? Let me bring this over to you and...
I'm Sean Hart. My company is kernel.com, Kernle. We're doing a customized Hyperledger to make things easier for companies to implement Hyperledger with their company, with their industry, and looking for Hyperledger developers that really know the code. So obviously kind of hard to know right now who that is, a lot of people in the space, but Hyperledger developers who really know the code. If you know someone or are someone that would be interested in getting into development with that, let me know. Paid or possibly equity position, let me know.
Anyone else in the room with any shout-outs? Mark, back there, hang on.
Hey guys, I'm Mark Patterson. Mark Patterson. So we're building I'm not sure how many people know anything about databases or querying technology like Elasticsearch, etc. But we're building a decentralized, generalized database protocol for blockchain and for decentralized data in general, which is we're going to make it really easy to get access to blockchain data. We're seeing lots of dApps not scaling. They're taking data off the blockchain and they're centralizing it to create experiences around applications, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of using blockchain in the first place. So we're basically building a brand new database built from the ground up for blockchain to make it really easy to query information. So if anybody here is looking for work or interested, has database experience, has experience building applications, has experience with protocols, web protocols of any kind, please come speak to me.
Who are you and how do they do that?
Oh, so our company's called DataBlocks. If you can email me or come see me afterwards, my email is mark@datablocks.io. Yes. It's C++ engine, compiles down to WASM. The engine can run anywhere in any web browser, so essentially your web browser or mobile device or an IoT device becomes a node. So it's sort of a ultra lightweight in-browser node for any blockchain. Anybody trying to get access to it makes it easy to get access to blockchain data, so you don't have to have like gigabytes of a light client download to your computer or terabyte full node. We're basically we're bringing down the barriers to entry for getting access to dApps and into blockchains. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Any more? Richard, do you want to talk about Brexit for 5 minutes or 5 years? I don't know. You don't? Okay, all right, good. I'm going to, at this point, hand over to the first presentation. A good friend of mine in here from Scotland. He is from Scotland. I know he does not have a kilt, but he is from Scotland. You've done this before, so I'll let you do it again. It says here Duncan Johnston and Kevin O'Donnell, but Kevin is either very small and beneath there, or is not here. All right.
We need to probably.
Oh right. Well, we need to. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going wrong here. Something is like not. I'll go and ask someone outside.
Maybe it just has a boredom threshold.
Yeah, it might. You might need to keep on.
Wiggle things, right?
Do yeah. It's technology.
Okay, so in answer to the question, why is Kevin's name up here? There's a section I wanted to include, which is around production considerations, which is very much his contribution. So whilst he's in New York, not here, I wanted to just acknowledge that. Okay. So anyway, and Pete, was it 20 minutes thereabouts?
Yeah, 23. Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep it short. So I'm showing my age, of course, but when Hyperledger met Kubernetes, and by the way, when we say Hyperledger, we mean the umbrella organization. Just there is no such thing as a Hyperledger developer. Just saying. There's Hyperledger Burrow, Sawtooth Fabric, Indy, Aurora, and so on and so forth. So every time somebody does that, they normally mean Fabric, and they're normally from IBM. But I guess you're not. You're the exception. Anyway, so we're talking about really the sort of juxtaposition or the sort of convergence of two, I think, very interesting technologies, blockchain, and in this case, we're going to focus on the enterprise blockchain frameworks from Hyperledger, but there's a shout out at the end where I'm going to actually hopefully get a few words. You've been warned. from Chris from Digital Asset to talk about some of the stuff they've been doing, and really want to make it interactive if possible. So, starting with a warning, this is the marketing pit, so apologies, but just very, very briefly. As Pete said, we're very focused on enterprise and enterprise adoption of blockchain, and what's the biggest inhibitor to that? Short answer, getting people to forget about all of the plumbing and actually start thinking about the applications themselves. So, of course, it's cool tech, and you can sort of, any developer given, the slightest encouragement will bore to the center of the earth and just keep going. But we don't want people to do that. We want people to actually use the technology, use the frameworks. Why? Because otherwise it's middleware which just sits there doing nothing. It may not even look pretty. So we want people to actually use the technology to develop interesting applications. So that's really what we see as our role. And it's a familiar refrain. So I was at reInvent where we launched our first product in November. And the refrain that you heard from Werner Vogels, from people on his team during the CTO CTO keynote, sorry, was we provide X so you don't have to. So we provide the platform so you don't have to. And so this is a fundamentally important thing. If we want people to adopt this technology, we've got to make it easy. We've got to make it as easy as possible for them to actually become productive really, really fast. Big sort of ambition, but it boils down to having a product, something called Sextant. If you're familiar with Kubernetes and you know about Helms and Tillers, that's great, but if you actually really want to navigate your way through life, then use a Sextant. And one of the sort of amusing and I think fascinating things is that Apollo 11 astronauts carried a Sextant and used the Sextant to actually navigate, use the stars to get to the moon and back. Now they had a bit of help, they had mission control and a few other things, but they carried that for a very good reason, in that if all else failed, they knew that they could actually still navigate using an instrument that's been around for hundreds of years. And if you look at any of the astronaut training, they do blend the old with the new. Fascinating, for me anyway. So this is navigating blockchain management. So it's helping people spin up. In this case, we're focusing on Sawtooth initially, but we've got plans to move beyond that. But providing that platform and then getting people to use it rather than get lost in the weeds. We have gray hair, is all this slide says. It also says that we're huge fans of open source. And when I stood up here before, last year, I was saying very much the same thing. From our point of view, everything in the world of blockchain needs to be founded on open source. So, this is about something that's too big to be owned by a single company or governed by a single company. And so the whole raison d'etre of the Hyperledger community, which is part of the Linux Foundation, is to really ensure that there is a governance framework around the core technology. And that's not just the frameworks, it's the tools as well. We are obviously going to talk tonight about how you also take another component, this time Kubernetes, which I hope you've all heard of. So Kubernetes, we're going to argue as I go through this presentation, is really the right foundation on which to deploy things here and now, both on-prem or on-premises, by the way, if I'm being pedantic. So on-premise means something completely different, but premises are buildings. I told you I was being pedantic. So why are we working with Hyperledger? Well, one of the things that we like about it is that it's extremely modular, extremely simple, but very powerful because of that. So there's a very clean separation between the network layer. So this is handling the global state, handling the actual Merkle tree and also the chain itself, and what's happening at the application level. So one of the nice things about this, and this is not just me saying it, but there are other members. There's nearly 300 companies now in the Hyperledger community, but ScanTrust, one of the member companies, we're able to take existing code and port it, migrate it, whatever word you want to use, onto Sawtooth very, very simply, very, very quickly. Why? Because if you understand client-server architectures, if you understand asynchronous messaging, you're almost all the way. Now, you've got to do a bit more work. You've got to understand how to manage state, what state should be on-chain, what state should not be on-chain. But it's a very interesting point, I think, that the architecture lends itself to that. The other thing that the Sawtooth community is very keen on is supporting multiple different contract languages, smart contract languages. So there's already support for Solidity and for WebAssembly. We expect there to be others along the way, and that means that you get everything from being able to do custom transaction processes, custom business logic in a language of your choice, through to actually working with a range of different smart contract languages. And being able to do all of that on the same platform, I think is very powerful. And finally, it's pluggable. So the consensus algorithm, which is something which obviously I'm sure you've all thought about a great deal. There are a wide variety of them, everything from Paxos to PBFT to Raft and various other flavors in between. The nice thing about Sawtooth is this is something you can plug in. So you can actually think of it as being able to create or personalize a network, both in terms of what it's handling from a business point of view, so that gives it character, and also what consensus algorithm or protocol is it actually using. So why Kubernetes? Anybody not heard of Kubernetes?
Let's suppose for a minute I haven't.
All right, let's suppose for a minute you haven't. Then, without reading off the slide, so it started out as, so Borg was the internal system that Google themselves used back in the day, developed over a decade or more to actually manage their own infrastructure. So everything they do is container-based. And so they built this internal platform. A good friend of mine, John Willis, was one of the sort of lead architects on this. And what they did was they then said, well, people like Craig McLuckie said, we really want to be able to make this more widely available. Let's open source it. But rather than open source Borg, which by then was, I guess you could think of that as V1, and 10 years in the making, they said, well, let's take what we learned from that and create what became Kubernetes. So create a platform that allows you to manage in a very sort of elegant way containers. So typically Docker containers, not exclusively, but that's the sort of the default. Yes?
What's a container?
It's something you put your lunch in, and it has a lid, and you put the lid on it, and right, okay, so containers are very lightweight. You can think of it as almost representing a single process. That's not quite true, but it's a Docker container, again, by and large it's Docker, is a very, very lightweight component. So if you're thinking of something like, people say microservices, what they really mean is small components or single purpose components that are then wired up together. So a container is a way of encapsulating that. It's actually a file, and it's a multi-layered file which gives you all of the instructions needed to build up that specific component. And generally speaking, it's immutable. It doesn't have to be, but the whole idea is to work with small self-contained components and wire them up. So the containers, therefore that means you can get container sprawl. As humans, we create sprawl wherever we go. It doesn't matter what we're doing, we create entropy. The moment we walk in, things start falling apart. So the idea behind Kubernetes is to provide you with a way of creating things called manifests. So this is really like a manifest, like a bill of materials, but it's saying, to build this service, here are the following containers that I need to put together into what's called a pod typically. So a pod is something that runs, generally speaking, if you drill down far enough, on a single server, physical server, can be virtual. But the idea is that because you're dealing with modern architectures, a lot of these manifests describe a set of components that are meant to be self-organizing. So the old idea of having to orchestrate everything turns out to be horrendously complex and can end up in lots of complex sort of, not just deadlock, but live lock situations where something's waiting, A is waiting for B, B is waiting for A, and you don't realize this until, because there's a chain between A and B, they're not actually next to one another. So the idea is instead to build architectures that by and large can be spun up and can sort themselves out. But you do that with a manifest as a way of describing a complex service out of smaller component parts. Does that answer your question?
And one of these components could be a blockchain?
Unlikely. It's if I go back to here, whoops, go back. That's the punchline. If you look at this little diagram here, this is, a validator is a process.
Right.
A network of validators talk to one another, but on each host, you will have a validator, and this is Sawtooth, and some set of transaction processors. Each of those processes is encapsulated as a Docker image, which when you add water becomes an actual running component.
So essentially, to make that work, you've got a few containers.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So manifest typically describes a set of containers and how they're related, and then you can. It's sort of Lego building blocks essentially. So you take that pattern, including in this case a REST service, and you just take that and you run it wherever. And you don't typically run one of these, you run a set of these, so you run a cluster. So the unit of, in Kubernetes, there's the unit of deployment is a cluster, a number of nodes, and those nodes are coordinated by one or more masters that actually handle the distribution of the work across the cluster. But the idea is that whatever granularity you're looking at, whether you're looking at a complete blockchain, and I prefer to say network, because really it's a network. It implements a blockchain or a DLT, but actually it's a network of nodes that are typically talking to one another through some kind of gossip protocol. And then those, in the case of, again, being specific to Sawtooth, the validators handle all the low-level traffic and also route transactions to the right TP, the right transaction processor. They don't know what they're handing off. All they're looking at is effectively a header that says, this is for TP family X, Y, or Z. So it's, again, this nice separation between what's happening within the network and what's happening in terms of the business logic, the actual application, the thing that makes it interesting. So even though Pete's not heard of it, Kubernetes is, in fact, you remind me of my son, who he's also very annoying at times. No, who when he was very young was very, very serious, still is actually, and you'd say, yeah, have you had a good day? And he'd look at you very seriously and say, so far. It's like obviously waiting for some disaster or something. So anyway, Kubernetes, widely used, more importantly probably from our point of view as a community, widely available. So available as a service. That means that somebody else is standing up for you. We don't have to do it ourselves. So all the cloud service providers do that now. Google also allows you to do it on-prem. So as a kind of way of doing stuff in a cloud agnostic, easy to use, easy to consume way, it's a logical place to go. Now, it's the de facto standard for container orchestration, and I was going to say just ask Docker, except I stepped forward. The irony of all this is that when you go and look at enterprise Docker, you have a choice for orchestration of Swarm or Kubernetes, which is basically, a nod to what Docker themselves try to do. But the reality is that Kubernetes is now the standard, even if you're using Docker. So, right, how much time have I got left after that disruption from that person in the corner there? Okay, cool. All right, so this is the meat of really what I wanted to talk about in terms of what do you need to think about when you're actually looking at running a production system? What are the key considerations? So the next 4 slides, huge amount of content. I'm scratching the surface here, but this is really what our CTO has sort of put together. So what you want to do is minimize a number of things that could go wrong from going wrong. So you want to minimize the ways in which the system can fail. So again, Kubernetes, very handy in that, if it's basically what it's doing is it's always trying to converge on a desired state. So I assume you've heard the notion of a desired state in computing terms. Essentially, it's saying, I want the system to look like this. And that's really where these manifests and so on come in. And if it's like that, everybody's happy. The moment it diverges, then the job of Kubernetes is to converge back to that state. So the example that Google was used to use was, we want 10,000 engines doing something. We will converge to 10,000, but we also have a minimum we need in order to be providing a service. And so, that number will obviously be significantly below 10,000, but it won't be, small numbers. So it's that idea of, the desired state is I have 10,000 nodes running. I'm okay if there's 8,000. The closer I get to 10,000, the happier I am. And you can change the desired state. So you can then say, actually, when I said 10, I meant 11. Or maybe I meant 9,000 because I need to ratchet back. And all the time, what you're doing is setting goals, and then it's up to Kubernetes to then figure that out for you. One of the other things you've got to deal with is however much you try to sort of create a uniform environment, invariably it never is uniform. So when I talk about running a network, be it Sawtooth or whatever, I'm imagining in my head it's not a small number of these machines in a single data center or in a single region, in a single cloud. It's going to be spanning multiple regions, multiple clouds. It's going to be a very sort of complex environment because that's the real world. So if you actually, the issue is if you don't set out with that in mind, you can convince yourself that this is very easy. I'm running my entire blockchain network on my laptop, and everything's working fine. Well, that's probably not a good environment. It's a good environment if you're just developing a single unit of a business process. The moment you want to test it, you should be running it on a real network, preferably more wide area. And the reason for that is because then you're dealing with real-world latency. Another thing, pets versus cattle, anybody? I'm in Texas, so I do know of somebody, by the way, who actually has names for his cattle. That's the exception rather than the rule. Pets versus cattle means cattle, whether it's 1,000 of them, whether it's 900, whatever, it doesn't matter, it's just a herd. So it's getting away from this idea that the components are special. They're not. You're rolling out large scale numbers of these. It has to be something that you can deal with as cattle, not pets. So if you give them names and you start caring for them and treating them like pets, then you're in the wrong business. Managing across organizational boundaries. I mean, one of the key things about the way in which we think about let's call them distributed ledgers is, one of the classic use cases is multi-party. So that generally will mean multiple organizations each running their bit of the network. So you've got to give people the tools that make it easy to then add what they're doing to the existing network, not just rock up and start something from scratch. There's this notion of, and this is, by the way, just as an aside, when we spin things up and tear them down, spin them up and tear them down in sort of a classic sort of rapid development cycle, we're actually doing something you don't actually really do in reality, because you don't spin up and tear down, spin up and tear down production environments. Well, you can, but you'll be probably out of work very quickly. The network, this is obviously, if Kevin was doing this is obviously a pun. It's a bad pun, but we'll accept it. The network is complex. The topology you're dealing with, of course, the whole idea of these frameworks is to make it as homogeneous as possible. But actually, in reality, when you're deploying these systems, large-scale systems, then you're going to be hitting bumps in the road with networking. And finally, this is not just, although there's a reference to Sawtooth in here, this is a general point. Blockchains or DLTs are ultimately data services. So it was interesting, the comment you were making, because in essence, the problem, as I understand you're trying to solve, is they are data services, but they're also somewhat hard to interact or interoperate with if you're trying to do more conventional, I guess, computing. So there are different ways of solving that problem. You can have, you can synchronize, you can sort of have, basically you can siphon off data from a blockchain and work with it that way, but just remember it's not the single source of truth, that's within the network. And then things like data retention. And finally, and these are not solved problems, has anybody thought about the right to be forgotten on a blockchain? I assume you all know what I'm talking about. So it's kind of antithetical, right? So, but there will be some circumstances where you're going to bump up against a regulatory framework where that is incredibly important. How do you manage a system over years? So how do you deal with rolling upgrades and so on, not just of individual components, but of the whole system? So, and our favorite one, key management. So, which, if that goes wrong, is, I wouldn't say the end of the world, but it's pretty damn close to it. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over what we're doing. I can talk to you about that afterwards. But I want to just do a couple of shout-outs. So, besides our company, Blockchain Technology Partners, there are a number of other companies heavily involved in sort of, bringing blockchain and Kubernetes together. So Monax, who I guess some of you will have known as Eris, and will have heard about Marmots and God knows what. Anyway, Monax contributed Hyperledger Burrow, which uses the 10-bit protocol. So I see a nod in the audience. So they've been doing work with Kubernetes for years, before it was fashionable. ATech, consulting firm, been doing a lot of work with Hyperledger Fabric and how do you deploy that using Kubernetes. Interestingly, our talk on that at the Hyperledger Global Forum took about 45 minutes. They did a half-day workshop, just saying, if you didn't get that, never mind. Digital asset, Chris, why don't you give us a quick rundown on what you guys are doing, because it's very interesting, I think.
So we're early adopters of Kubernetes. We have our own platform stack. We went very early down the Istio service mesh path. Most of the challenges with running distributed applications that need to auto-scale, it's all the networking. That's always the challenge or the pain points. Istio is interesting because most of the major vendors in the Kubernetes space seem to be moving towards Istio. Cloud Foundry is going there. Google, of course, is backing it. Other challenges we've had with the financial clients, blockchain's new, DLT's new. A lot of the traditional finance clients, they're still just getting into Kubernetes. So they're really looking for a trusted vendor to provide a Kubernetes platform itself. It feels like this is the year that you're going to see that happening. You've got VMware with the Heptio acquisition. You have Pivotal essentially switching over to Kubernetes native. Happy to talk about the challenges that we've had with Kubernetes, but we've seen tons of benefit. We were very, very early on Envoy before Istio was even there. All of our processes scale out. We use the health checks. Like we're been all in on Kubernetes for quite some time, and it's made our test deployment and scale testing. We did simulated the U.S. equities market on the day that Lehman crashed. So we spun up 100,000 cores on GCP to run this market simulation. We did this over and over again doing benchmarking data. Would have been very challenging to do that without something like Kubernetes. So again, happy to talk in more detail. Chris Clayson, I work for Digital Asset. I run our strategic partnerships. I also have represent us on the Hyperledger board. I live in Austin, but I work in New York, so I'm here when I can be.
Thank you. And of course, it's not just folk within the Hyperledger community, but that's the one that I know best. But the idea of using Kubernetes as a substrate has been around for a while. I think what I found particularly interesting in terms of the Hyperledger community was we had a member summit where we all got together in October of last year, and ourselves and Monax were sort of agitating to say we really need to standardize on this as a default for all the projects. And Brian Bellendorf, who runs the whole thing, said, well, it's a collegiate big tent, so I can't tell people what to do, but by the time we got to December, so less than 3 months later, there were half a dozen different companies all talking about the work they were doing within the Hyperledger community around Kubernetes. And here are some of the links. And I wasn't kidding that if you're doing Hyperledger Fabric, it's parts 1, part 2, and there's probably what is it Star Wars calls it when you have the prelude or the prequel? Yeah, so I'm sure there's a Hyper Fabric prequel somewhere in there. Anyway, that's it. Any questions? Stunned silence? Yep.
The inferences you're making these charts.
Oh, sure. Well, Pete's already got hold of them. So if I could, if I wanted to not, it's too late.
I have a question about, can you go to the earlier slide?
Sure.
Good, you did that. So.
Tell me when to stop.
Spoke about, no,
Sorry?
the next one.
This one.
Yeah, this one, yes.
Yep.
So the digital asset that he spoke about,
That's.
Tech, Monax,
Yep.
all of this. So let us talk about these three here.
Yep.
Is there a common set of standards that all of them adhere to? For example, they use Kubernetes as a substrate, you said, but are they aiming aiming towards converging on a common set of standards and protocols and stuff?
It's.
Or are they going to be different?
I think it's I think the frameworks are all somewhat different. In the case of Fabric, very different in terms of the architecture. So there won't. So the convergence is more around the tooling. So it's saying, number one, let's package everything using Docker. So all of the components are therefore things that you can point at. So in our case, we actually create a sawtooth distribution, which means we build, test, and maintain a version, and this is a sort of Red Hat model, as some people sometimes refer to it. But the idea is that that's what you create. When somebody says they build a new release or an overnight build of one of these projects, they're typically, at the end of that, producing a set of Docker images. And those will be versioned, and then what you then do is you say, fine, now I've got these various manifests. The manifests describe the relationship between those different components, and then allow you to then sort of deploy them. So it's standardizing on the runtime orchestration around Kubernetes and the packaging using Docker. So those are the two key things that we're agreeing on.
So that is coming from us, okay, so I kind of get that. But
Yep.
From a point of view of providing common services, right? Are they all aiming towards being a blockchain hosting service of some kind?
No,
What's the point in having Docker on top of Kubernetes? I mean, what is the business value add?
Have you tried doing it without? How would you do it?
My question is,
I mean,
they provide the middleware, they provide the low-level services, they'll provide the container orchestration on top of Kubernetes and all that.
yep.
But what is the business value add? I mean, what are they trying to do from a business point of view? Are they trying to make it easy to host blockchain?
Whether it's done as a service, delivered as a service, or whether it's operated by the companies themselves, it's about simplifying the ongoing management. So the real headache is the operations. So think of this as solving or providing that operational envelope, which is a set of policies around how to build and deploy and then manage on an ongoing basis over a long period of time a complex distributed system, which is all of these blockchain networks are. So it's how do I resolve that? So it's very easy to do a science experiment where it's 4 nodes, it's sitting maybe on 4 machines, or maybe it's on my laptop using virtual machines. That's a kind of toy environment. So when you actually move into production environments, you've got issues of scale. So Chris was talking about automating that process so that you scale out and scale back based on demand. Scale back is obviously non-trivial, but the idea is that you grow the network based on the demand or based on the geographic sort of requirements. So it's all about trying to minimize issues at that level. So it's sometimes called, the old way of describing it was non-functional requirements. So the functional requirements are what you want an application to do. The non-functional requirements are actually in many cases the harder things to address, which is how you want it to be operated. So that, when I started out, I was very much a developer and I ran development teams, and it took me a long time to appreciate that what I thought was finished was in fact barely started, because it was only when it was operationalized that people could sign off on it. Only when you proved that it would scale out and it would run at volume, or wide area is the classic killer. If you don't think about that up front and don't understand the operational impact of that, then it's very hard to sort of retrofit that. So this is all about, in a way, taking a lot of the pain, a lot of the strain out of the deployment and management so that people can then build apps, and those apps then become the real value. Does that help?
And the other is the new set of applications, the new set of requirements has a great requirement for being instantaneous. For example, I need 1 millisecond to carry on a virtual discussion with you with any understanding, like we are doing right now. That's like 200-mile radius, 100-mile radius, I'm sorry, but basically in a basin. Has to be satisfied within the LA basin or the Waco, San Antonio basin or whatever.
So that's true of some of the sort of high-speed sort of market data infrastructure, but that's not what we would put onto a blockchain, to be honest with you. So.
I'm talking about Kubernetes. I'm talking about what you're deploying.
So, well, again, it's about breaking it down so that, you know, if the unit of deployment that you care about is a cluster, then the cluster can be quite large, but what that typically will be is in a single region or a single be across multiple availability zones, but within a single physical location. So now you have, if you've ever done astronomy, it's mind-blowing because you start with sort of an astronomical unit, which is just, you know, Earth to Sun, then you scale out, then you scale out, then you get to galaxies, then you get to super galaxies, and then, so we have to think in the same way, that we're building out not just clusters, but clusters of clusters, without getting a cluster FUCK.
My geography is a 100,000 foot UAV and a city below that has to work one entity. That's not a galaxy.
No, it's a consideration, but I think, again, it's understanding what are the requirements for the particular application you're running. Because in the world of blockchain or DLT, there is latency, whether you like it or not, and that's not just distance, that's actually the mean time between blocks being actually contributed or committed, right? And that's not instantaneous. So I think understanding the behavior is really fundamental.
Any more questions? All right. Okay, thank you, Duncan. So we're going to make quite a big switch now and bring David on to talk about Steem, which is a public blockchain, which is being built here in Austin now, and probably elsewhere, but headquartered here in Austin, and has some applications running and more applications to come. So let's get David up. You're going to need an HDMI, aren't you?
Yeah, HDMI.
Okay. Let's bring. It probably work better than Apple TV. So
Is this your computer?
that's mine. So I can take mine. Do you need my power? Or do you need
It should be good for right now.
Do use the microphone because that way we know it will be picked up for the audio. So
Okay.
I'm not going to use my power. I'm going to take because otherwise I'll end up losing my power. Those are definitely needed to stop your laptop falling off. All right. Okay. Over to you.
Microphone.
Our microphone is. There you go.
Thanks. Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is David Jeffries. I'm the Business Development Manager for Steem & Inc. And my position is twofold. I manage all the exchange relationships for Steem, the cryptocurrency, both like current exchange relationships, and then I try to get Steem listed on more exchanges. And the second part of my job is I try to bring blockchain apps to build on Steem. So I've talked to dozens to hundreds of developers and blockchain applications that are what I call shopping for a blockchain. And I kind of give them a tour of Steem and the Steem app ecosystem and try to get them to build on Steem instead of going to build on Tron or Ethereum or some of these other public infrastructure applications. Just to get a sense of the audience here, how many people have heard of Steemit? Okay, pretty good. How many people have ever made a post on Steemit or signed up for an account? Okay, cool. I brought T-shirts for anyone that's signed up for Steem It or made a post, so please see me after. I've got 15 T-shirts, so I think it was pretty close. But I'll give you a quick introduction. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I moved down here over the summer, end of August, to work out of Steem It headquarters. And how I got to Steem It is I fell in love with Bitcoin in early to mid 2013, and really have kind of been obsessed ever since. So I've got quite a bit of experience, just being a student of the ecosystem. I actually founded the Buffalo Bitcoin meetup. Don't get as many people as Pete's meetup here, but it's been pretty interesting kind of having that experience and seeing, a couple different boom and bust cycles. When we founded the Buffalo Bitcoin meetup in December 2013, the room was full. There were doctors and lawyers and everyone was there, kind of wondering what's going on. And then, the next summer later, summer of 14 going into 15, it was just me and the guy that founded it kind of sitting there looking at each other, wondering where everybody went. And then, interestingly enough, we kind of saw the same thing happen again. December 2017, when Bitcoin made its run up to 20 grand, the room was full again. It kind of basically turned into like a penny stock club where everyone was just in, and all these guys had really no idea what they're talking about, but they're just throwing all this money at it. And so it's been kind of fun to watch these cycles. And I've got a feeling that these cycles just keep playing out for the next 10, 20, 30 years, because I think we've barely scratched the surface of what this technology allows. So I'm going to kind of dive in and give everyone a little tour of the Steem app ecosystem tonight. And I'd like to try to make this as interactive as possible, so please feel free to stop me if you have any questions or if you don't understand anything. But yeah, let me just kind of dive in now. So the first thing to kind of get out of the way is everyone's heard of Steem It, but I doubt that, I'd be shocked if, oh, yeah, that's all right. So everyone's heard of Steem It, but Steem It is really the tip of the iceberg when it comes to kind of the power and potential of the Steem blockchain. Steem It is one of the dozens of fast functional blockchain apps that are built on Steem and specifically leverage Steem for one, distributed content management, and two, autonomous token distribution. So content management that's kind of robust and can't get taken down. The Steem blockchain has content management primitives built in, like follows and unfollows, and like titles and bodies and users and usernames, readable usernames, unlike Bitcoin and Ethereum, which have the hexadecimal kind of public addresses. Here on Steem, your public address is a username. Mine is Bird Inc., and that's tied to different levels of public-private key pairs, which we'll get into in a minute. All right, so Steem started out the year in the top 20, but we've kind of taken a hit. It's down. Right now we're in the top 50. We're actually number 40 right now. So Steem, if you take all the Steem that exists and you times it by the current price, it's about a $120 million project. But here's a little blast from the past. This is CoinMarketCap, July 2016. And you see, we're ahead of Ripple here. I'm sure you kind of see that. And kind of, based on what I'm going to get into today, I think there's a chance that Steem makes it back into the top 10. So the Steem blockchain, to give it a little history, the Steem blockchain was launched in March of 2016 in a crypto bear market, kind of like what we're experiencing now. And 3 months after they launched the Steem blockchain, the core team that launched it, of which was one of them, the main dev was Dan Larimer, who moved on to EOS now. But he was kind of the guy, the CTO of Steem It back then, that built the Steem blockchain. So a lot of the Larimer logic and kind of thought process and decentralized exchange and human readable names, a lot of that stuff is in the Steem blockchain. Also, delegated proof of stake, which is the consensus mechanism that secures the Steem blockchain. We can talk about that in a little bit. And so they built Steemit.com kind of in conjunction with the Steem blockchain. And so they launched the Steem blockchain, 3 months later, Steemit.com went live. When Steemit.com went live, it kind of took the crypto world, which was, in a bear market and way smaller than it is now. And that's kind of, why you see this little bump here where it extremely outperformed the price of Bitcoin during that time. Has anyone ever heard of blocktivity.info? So blocktivity.info is a pretty cool site. I like to show people. It's a little, can't really see. So what it does is it's showing the daily on-chain transaction numbers, and you see Steem in the last 24 hours. And so right here you have Steem at about 1 million transactions, 1 million on-chain operations in the last 24 hours. And you see Ethereum on here at about 500,000, 580,000. So on a regular day, the Steem blockchain processes twice as many operations as Ethereum. So I'll kind of dive into Steemit.com, and then I'll walk you through the concept of stake-weighted voting, which is really what drives this whole thing. And then I'll take you on a spin of a couple of the blockchain apps. A couple of my favorite apps on top of Steem. And so Steemit.com, essentially you have just a news feed, and that news feed talks to the Steem blockchain. So you can come in here and you have a news feed, you have your wallet, you have your blog feed, where you post content, and that content becomes eligible to earn cryptocurrency. Let's see. And so in my wallet here, I've got about 1,000 Steem, which is worth at current market values about $400. So then if we go back to the home page, I can look at my feed and I can give someone an upvote. And what that does is it sends 2 cents to that user. But an important distinction is that 2 cents doesn't come out of my wallet. Basically what I'm doing is I'm telling the blockchain how to allocate the future inflation. Where with Bitcoin, the future inflation goes to the miners. Here with Steem, kind of the twist on it is 75% of the new inflation goes to what we call proof of brain or proof of brain power, where 75% of the new inflation goes to the content creators and 15% of the new inflation goes to the stakeholders. And so in your wallet here, there's a thing called Steem, and then there's a thing called Steem Power. Those are actually the same token. Steem Power is just a locked up, vested version of Steem that isn't liquid. And so if the whole system's kind of gamified to keep people invested and let people use that invested stake to influence how the tokens get distributed. And so Steem Power becomes liquid if you power down. And so I have 1,000 Steem. If I wanted to go liquid and turn that into cash, I could power down and I would get about 80 Steem a week for 13 weeks, and then I would be fully divested. All the while, my influence, my voting power on the platform would decline at the same rate.
So does that mean if you powered down that your vote wouldn't give them 2 cents? It would
Yeah.
only give them a half a cent or something?
Yeah, exactly. And so you would lose 1/13 of your voting power every week for 13 weeks, at which point you would have 0 voting power.
Okay, and 1,000 Steem power gives you like the ability to give people 2 cents.
Yeah, exactly. And that the same math applies. Like if you scale up or down. Let's see. And so another cool thing about there's really a lot to get into, but another cool thing is Steem has a decentralized marketplace built into it. Because Dan Larimer built BitShares, he took a lot of that BitShares logic and just stuffed it right into Steem. So you can actually trade Steem for Steem dollars on chain. Steem dollars is the second cryptocurrency that's built in, that's native of the Steem blockchain, and Steem dollars is kind of the liquid payout mechanism. If you make a post, let's see, so if you make a post and you earn some money, let's see. And so half of your payout is paid out in Steem Power per the rules of the blockchain. The other half is paid out in Steem dollars, and so that's kind of like your liquidity layer. So it was a mechanism built in to allow people to take half the value of their post earnings, and be able to cash that out. And so right on chain, you can go from like, if you made a post and you earned $200, you could take $100 and you could trade that from Steem dollars to Steem right on chain, and then you could hop over to Binance or another crypto to crypto exchange, get to Bitcoin, and then sell the Bitcoin and go to dollars in your wallet via like a BitPay card or something. And so pretty cool aspect to have that kind of decentralized marketplace built in. So another cool kind of thing I touched on earlier, these are all public keys, so don't worry, not that you can see them. So my account name here is Bird Inc. And that account name is tied to 4 different public-private key pairs. And so you have your posting key, and all the different key pairs give you different access to your account. You have your posting key, which lets you log in to any app, including Steemit.com, and you can post to the blockchain, but you're not allowed to move any money with the posting key. And then there's an active key here where you can log into any of the apps with the active key, and if you log in with the active key, you're allowed to move money, you're allowed to power down, you're allowed to power up. And then there's the owner key. Then like the third key that's not used that much is a memo key, which is pretty cool because you can actually send on-chain encrypted messages to anyone, and they can only see it if they log in with their owner key with their owner key or memo key. And so that's the third one, and then you have your owner key, which is the master key on the account, and it actually allows you to go change any of the other keys if anything was compromised. So you could have like a team of social media people. You could give them all. You could give your whole team the private posting key, and if someone was compromised, you could just quickly change it out. And so there's some pretty cool safeguards built in. Another safeguard built into the Steem blockchain is the concept of account recovery. And so, per the rules of the blockchain, if your owner key is compromised, when you create an account, you set a recovery provider. And so if God forbid your owner key is compromised, all you have to do is reach out to your recovery provider, who's a trusted source. Steemit, signs up a lot of accounts, and like by default, @Steemit is the recovery account on like all accounts that are signed up with Steemit. And so you would tell your recovery provider, all you have to do is give them like your last owner key, and then they can create a new private key, give you the new private key, and lock out the hacker. So pretty neat, recovery kind of stuff built in. Let's see.
The hacker also do that?
Yeah, but he wouldn't have the new key, and so in order to change, you can change the owner, you can change the private key on the owner account, but in order to change it, so the hacker would get your account, he would change it, and you wouldn't be able to get in.
So he gets the owner key.
Yeah, so he gets the owner key, but then you would have your friend generate a new owner key, and then you would be good. And as long as he doesn't have access to that, you would lock him out.
I guess all I was saying is he had the owner key, couldn't he have, well, I guess, are you the only one who knows who that friend is? Or how come the hacker couldn't take the owner key and just generate a new key and lock you out?
Yeah, so that's what would happen. Like if I lost my account, the hacker would lock me out, and I wouldn't be able to log in. And then I'd go to my friend, and I would say, hey, I'm locked out. Can you generate a new private key for me? And so he would generate a new private key in the command line, he would give you the new private key, and then all of a sudden the hacker can't get back in. And assuming your system's safe and the hacker doesn't have access to A, your friend, or B, that new private key, like he's out.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is if he had access to the friend, but does he not know who the friend is? Or is it Steem it for everyone?
It's Steem it for most people that sign up with the Steem account, but you can go into the command line and you can change it, or there's a handful of third-party services where you can actually buy Steem accounts.
Okay.
Let's see. So one other thing to get into before we look at some of the other apps is the concept of stake-weighted voting, and then kind of how all this is possible, because you couldn't build Steemit.com on top of Ethereum because of the 20-second block times and the fees. The fees wouldn't allow you to post or vote or comment or anything. Oops. Oh, damn it. I'm kind of fumbling around here. Not sure what's going on. Oh shoot, the whole thing just shut down. All right, there we go. All right, so what I'm trying to bring up here is the steamd.com block explorer. And then this, coupled with a slide on stake-weighted voting, kind of brings the whole thing home on how it works. So here is a test account where, and so that 2 cents that I give to the person isn't just unlimited. You know, every time I vote, he gets 2 cents. There's a concept called voting power, and your voting power actually declines every upvote you give. So based on the rules of the blockchain, you have about 10 or 11 full 100% upvotes to give every day. And you can upvote yourself, you can pay yourself, and a lot of people do that, although it's kind of frowned upon, and if someone catches you, they usually try to flag your account. But here we can real quick walk through an example. This example account was, when the price was a little higher. So here I've got Steem at $1.30. My same account with 1,000, was worth $1,300 back then. And this was a couple months ago. And this would kind of show you how you could give away 11 upvotes, and you would total give away 80 cents. And it's kind of like a diminishing return. As you give an upvote, your voting power declines. So here you can see the voting power is at 98%. And if I go back to steemit.com and I vote this new post, and then we go back to the block explorer, you see my voting power is down to 96%. And so I could blow that all the way down to 0 and give away 5 days worth of voting power, or I could stop at 80%, and then the voting power recharges 20% every day.
So where is the money coming from?
So the money comes from the new inflation. And so like Bitcoin, the new inflation goes to pay the miners. Here, the new inflation goes to pay the content creators. And the inflation rate when the Steem blockchain launched was 10%, and it declines by about 0.5% a year until it gets to 2%, and then it stays 2% forever. So because it's blockchain, there's a cost associated with all this. There's a cost associated with each operation, a comment and a post being the most computationally intensive operation, and then there's voting operations, and then there's other transfer kind of mechanisms. And a new account, and so so you have to have some Steem power basically in order to operate on the network. If you just bought a new account and you didn't have any Steem power, you wouldn't be able to do anything. Because I have 1,000 Steem power in this account, I basically have, not unlimited, but I have hundreds of comments and hundreds of votes and hundreds of transfers every day. And so when a new account signs up through Steemit.com, we give them we loan them a little bit of Steem, 15 Steem, and that 15 Steem allows a new user 4.6 comments a day, which doesn't sound that much, but I think that makes Steem a pretty interesting social network, because I think it's the first social network where, you know, fundamentally there's like a cost associated with being on it. And so it really doesn't impact anything right now because the price is so low. The price of Steem is about 40 cents right now. And so a free account costs a couple bucks, but when Steem was as high as $8, a free account wasn't free. You know, in order to operate the account, you needed to have about $40 worth of Steem. So, you know, if the whole market kind of cycles up again, I can see Steem and all this, in Steemit and all the Steem-based apps becoming sort of like, kind of like an exclusive club where you have to pay to get in a little bit, which kind of turns the whole concept of social networks that we're used to on its head.
Do you have any kind of a concept of like sponsored driven or ad driven so that you're paying for it, you have nothing there where you can earn from sponsors and you get ads and such?
So for the first time, we are going to look at putting ads on Steemit.com. There haven't been any ads on Steemit.com, but what you're thinking is baked into the blockchain. And so the concept would be a new user comes on and he's got to be careful with his comments. Like it's really, the reason all that's baked in is it's an anti-spam mechanism. So, you know, hackers can't just come in and, you know, run some bots and just spam the whole network. They have to pay for that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but a new user that comes on, you know, we loan them the 15 Steem, but after 90 days we can pull that back, and you know he's got to earn 15 Steem on his own if he wants to keep operating, or he can buy in.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So do you just earn Steem by creating content?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And so anyone can log in, they can make a post, and then that post becomes eligible for the stake-weighted upvotes. And so my first week on Steemit, about 2 years ago, was pretty exciting. I started a little blog trying to bring some of my experience from the last bubble to the current bubble. I started like a crypto thought series, and I started writing posts about different projects that I liked in the space. And someone with $500,000 of Steem came by and liked my post on Kin, and I made $80 just that first week because he had $500,000 in his account. I think he gave me like a 20% upvote, and that value from the new inflation flowed right into my account. So that's possible within the system too.
What's the size of the community?
Great question. That was the next slide. And so, like anything, you know, unfortunately it booms and busts with the price. But right now here's this line here is daily active users. So right now, if you take Steemit and all the other apps, we're holding strong at 40,000 daily active users, about 100,000 monthly active users, and yeah, it's pretty exciting to see. I think we're hitting the floor because, you know, I think if anyone was frustrated over the decline in price, you know, they probably have left already. And like that 40,000 daily active users, I think is probably here to stay. Which makes Steemit.com the #1 blockchain app in the world, which I don't think it's talked about enough. I wish more people kind of knew about that. And kind of as I started, you know, the talk, Steemit.com is really just the tip of the iceberg. So a couple months after Steemit.com was running, some other developers got together and they said, hey, like, you know, we want to make a better Steemit.com. And so these guys launched busy.org, which is kind of like it's a front end to the Steem blockchain that's kind of like a competitor in a sense to Steemit.com, but not really a competitor because it's all built on the same ecosystem. And And what you can do is you can go to busy.org and you can log in with this thing called Steem Connect, which is kind of like log in with Facebook. It lets you safely log into any Steem-based app, and it keeps your secret, your private keys client side. And so it creates a token, like an OAuth token, that lets you log in and it gives you those permissions. So we'll log into busy.org, and you see the same thing applies. It's just a little different. It's just a little different front end. And they've made some nice additions here where if you hover over the number of likes that you get, you can actually see the accounts and you can see how much value flows from each account. So you can't do that on Steemit.com, but these guys built that in. So I'll like this guy's post here, and then you see a little value is going to flow to him right there. And what I did right there was an on-chain operation. Every comment, every vote, every like, every transfer is an actual on-chain operation, which is why you couldn't build this on Ethereum or Bitcoin because of the block confirmation times and the fees. So there's a couple other Steemit-like front ends. One of my kind of up-and-coming favorites is Steem Peak, and it's pretty cool because it looks nicer, and they've got some customized like feeds here where Steemit.com you're kind of relying on trending, which has gotten polluted a little bit because you can buy votes, and so it kind of becomes like an advertising front page essentially, because people built these things called bid bots where you can like send a bid bot $100 worth of Steem, and they're going to upvote your post for like $90 and take a little cut. So Steem Peak is kind of like an up and coming interface. You can kind of browse different categories. They've got like a travel feed that's curated by a specific account that has a lot of curators, and so there's a lot of sub communities, in Steem and Steemit where a lot of good stuff kind of bubbles up, and like the sub communities will go get a delegation from like an investor or a big Steem whale, and then they'll use that power to go find the best content and reward the best content. And then Steem Peak actually displays that content based on categories. Another one that I'm starting to like and use more and more is Stevie.app. I'm sorry.
Quick question. I guess there's a cost to accessing content itself. So like when I'm browsing content, I'm actually like using Steem for my account to view it.
Yeah, so there is a cost to that, and most of that cost is bared by Steemit.api.steemit.com, and so us as a company, we host full nodes, and it costs a lot of money to run those full nodes because the entire history of the blockchain is there, and so it costs a couple $1,000s a month to run an AWS instance and to run the whole Steem blockchain, and then like those full nodes hit api.steemit.com, and most of the apps that I'm showing you hit api.steemit.com, and so that cost.
Do they pay for?
Right now it's free, but we're like seriously looking at cost reduction strategies, and we've just had a couple big wins where there's this thing called HiveMind, which it's like a non-consensus layer on top of the Steem blockchain, and it's written in Python, which is a lot easier to access. And it's a lot cheaper to run. And so what our engineering team has done recently in this major cost cutting initiative is they wrote this whole, it's kind of like a non-consensus layer that follows the Steem blockchain by 6 seconds. And so if you think about consensus and non-consensus, who owns what is consensus, and it's very important and has to be in the core blockchain code. Who follows who and who unfollows who used to be like an API plugin into Steemd, but we've since stripped that out into this non-consensus layer that kind of tags along by 6 seconds. And so most of the apps are now hitting this non-consensus layer for the social data. And so that's brought costs down.
So you're indexing different aspects of the data to make it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we actually met Mark's team a couple weeks ago. They've got some pretty cool stuff, and what his little pitch was about is kind of exactly what you're talking about. Like, you have all this data, it's expensive to run blockchain nodes. Like, how do you optimize that?
Yeah. Has anyone tried to
Yeah, actually that's the perfect timing for that question, because Stevie.app does just that. I don't exactly know how the backend works, but they say AI and machine learning, so they take all your activity and then they feed you up what they think you'll like. So I go to Stevie at least once a week, because in my Steemit feed it's just chronological, so I'll miss some stuff that's important, and then I'll go to Stevie.app on a Saturday, and I'll see all the posts that Steemit should have served me, but they're actually doing a better job. And so this Stevie.app just, are we good on time? Yeah. Okay. So Stevie.app just does just that, and it tags it with little pink in the corner there, and it kind of shows you, hey, you voted for this guy 5 times in the past. You might want to read this article. And so that's kind of cool. And it. All the same concepts apply. The stake-weighted voting, and actually you can go and you can see my wallet is on here too, and so it's the same account.
Oh, so you just
I'm logged into.
everything on there.
Yeah, and I logged in with that thing called Steem Connect. Yep, I can post from here too.
Is there a way to do that on an app on the phone, or is it just?
Yeah, exactly. And so on these other tabs
You
here.
don't have to log into your Steam account anymore. You just go to Steam.
What's that?
You don't have to log into the Steam account anymore.
So you actually log into Steemit.com with a Steem blockchain account. It's
I know, but I mean, are you using, like, if you're posting from Stevie, then you don't.
yeah. So with Stevie you log in with your same Steem account that you log into Steem with.
And then you just.
Yeah, and so you're in, and that's kind of the frictionless beauty of this
So
ecosystem.
then you can use that app to post as opposed to just go to Steam, so I don't have to go.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to use Steemit. You can kind of go to whichever front end that you feel most comfortable with. Of which there are 2 kind of up and coming mobile apps. One is called eSteem, and it's kind of a pretty slick mobile app that you can just have your Steem blockchain account on the go. And another up and comer is this app called Partico. It's really fast. It's a team of 2 Chinese guys that are building it, and they actually were Airbnb engineers, and they left Airbnb to go work on the Steem app full time. Here, this one called DTube. It's kind of like a YouTube knockoff. The same concept applies. You can log in with your Steem account using the Steem Connect thing, and then you can post only videos on this platform, and then those videos become eligible for cryptocurrency-based rewards, and the stake-weighted voting. So the same kind of thing applies here, and I could. I've got her post, and I'm going to like her post, and there you go, and a little value is going to flow to her just like it did on Steemit.com. I'll try to run through the next couple apps real quick so we don't take up too much time, but this one's pretty cool. It's called Steepshot. It's kind of like Instagram. Same concept applies. We looked at the 2 mobile apps. This one's pretty cool. It's called Steem Hunt. It's kind of like a twist on Product Hunt, where it's kind of like a community for geeks, or like tech-minded individuals, where they can hunt and share their favorite tech products, and earn cryptocurrency in the process. This one's called Musing. It's kind of like Quora. Same thing. You log in with your Steem account. You can earn crypto by asking and answering questions.
Did you put all these on your Birdie? Are you doing a blog post for that? Are you gonna list them?
What's that? Oh, do you want me to?
Yeah, can you list them on your Birdie?
Yeah, sure.
Just upload it there, because
Yeah.
that would be really cool if we could just have a list of these.
Yeah. So there's actually a thing. There's a handful. There's a handful of different sites. I built.
But if we just go to you and you could just like.
I built this one myself. Buildwithsteem.com. It kind of shows you, a handful of the top Steem-based apps. And then there's another one that's kind of cool I've been using lately, steamapps.com. Which shows you the top rated apps based on usage and payout. And then there's one, steamprojects.com is pretty cool, but it might be a little outdated. So there might be some user interfaces on here that kind of are just defunct projects. So there's a handful of different resources to go see where the best Steem-based apps are. to kind of finish out the list, you got Musings, which is like Quora. You've got Fundition, which is like Kickstarter. So he made this little gamified where you get tokens. You get heart tokens is the native token to Fundition, and every time you sign in, you get a little heart token, so it keeps you coming back. But here you can use your upvote to donate to projects that are looking to raise money, or you can just straight donate and send them Steem. But anyone can log in here and post projects that they're working on, just like Kickstarter. They can do charities. And so what's pretty cool is all these developers kind of know each other, and so there's a lot of cross collaboration where like the mobile app will go and want to do a new feature, and they'll go to Fundition to raise some money, and there's a lot of crossover, which is pretty cool to see. To kind of finish out the list, we've got Tasteam, which is like Yelp, really cool company out of Korea that does these contests, food review contests, where they'll put up a bounty and you can go, rate a Chinese restaurant in Korea, and then the top votes will end up getting their bounty. Like the top posts that receive the most votes will get their bounty. This one's really cool. These guys are out of France. It's a 2-person team, and they built a WordPress plugin called Steem-based. So any WordPress blog can just enable their plugin, and all of a sudden their content gets hashed, and put on the Steem blockchain, which is really cool. Steem Monsters.
Syndicate?
What's that?
So you're syndicating from your WordPress blog right to your
Yeah. And so that would let people, and then they've enabled a feature where you can log in and leave some comments, and so they've kind of created like a little Steem app, Steem ecosystem within any WordPress blog. So I'm helping them with little business development too. Steem Monsters is really cool. I know this is a lot to throw at you guys, but Steem Monsters is kind of like CryptoKitties, but I think on steroids because it's a non-fungible token, and you can actually own. It's like Magic the Gathering where you battle another team, but you actually own your card, and so you can come in here and you can buy a pack, and you can buy a pack for $2 or $10 if you want a full pack. And they started selling cards in May, and they've sold over $1 million in Steem Monster cards since May, which I think is just astonishing. So you can buy a pack, you can open a pack, and then you can see the marketplace here, where you've got some of your lower kind of quality cards, where they're trading for 4 cents, 6 cents, 33 cents, and then you can come in here and you can hit gold and legendary, and you see some of these cards, like this one right here, is trading for $500. So if you want an old Frost Giant, you can cash out $500 of Bitcoin and buy a Steem Monsters card. And really all it is a hash. So you own a hash that's on the blockchain, and then everyone per the rules of the game that they built agrees that hash represents your gold card. So I get real excited about this non-fungible token stuff, because I just think there's endless possibilities. You can see your collection here, and see I got a gold card a couple weeks ago. I bought a $2 pack, and I opened it up, and there was a card worth $30, which was pretty cool. And then they recently added a feature where you can battle, and so you can come in here and you can battle. You can just have your cards, and I'm just replaying a battle, but we'll just skip to the end. But you can battle people. So they've done a phenomenal job, and really, the engine they built behind this, copy, paste, change the art, and you could do anything. You could do Pokemon, you could do Magic, you could do fantasy football on the blockchain, and all this stuff is built with JavaScript or Ruby or Python. All there's APIs for like all web native development, which is why you literally could build a blockchain app in a weekend if you wanted to. You don't have to go learn Solidity or get involved in these smart contracts. So that's why Steem, I think, is the blockchain to build on if you're looking to build a blockchain application. The last one I'll leave you with is, this one's pretty cool. It's called On Game. The tagline is play video games and get paid. And what I particularly like about On Game is you see here that they've got, you can sync your Steem account, but you can also sync a Tron account. And so you can earn both Steem and Tron for streaming your video game, or posting reviews, or kind of leaving comments, or joining a little community. But you can engage with this community, and you can earn tokens, multiple tokens. And so I see a future where we see blockchain apps that are really blockchain agnostic, where they'll tap into multiple blockchains and they'll reward their users with multiple cryptocurrencies. Maybe even meta tokens on each blockchain go to different users for different reasons. But I'm excited that to like talk to the entrepreneurs that want to wire up to different blockchains, because you can tap into multiple tribes, multiple communities. I think there's a lot of benefits. So here's a little summary, and you see that like the Steem dominant index here is about 56%. So like most of the traffic, like 56% of the traffic to the Steem blockchain flows through steemit.com, but it's a pretty healthy ecosystem, because you have almost 50% of the Steem blockchain traffic coming not from the flagship app, but from other apps that these entrepreneurs just kind of built themselves. And to kind of bring it all around, to kind of bring it full circle, we're working on a meta token protocol called Smart Media Tokens, which will let any of these apps that you just saw launch their own token on top of Steem, just like you can launch an ERC20 on top of Ethereum. And so, hopefully by the end of the year or early next year, we'll see a world where all the apps I just showed you have their own money supply and their own market cap. And there's going to be a couple benefits of the Smart Media Tokens, because there's that decentralized exchange logic built in. DTube tokens will be able to trade for Steem on-chain, meaning DTube won't have to go pay a big listing fee to get listed on Binance. They could if they want, but they will have that liquidity kind of built in. So that's pretty much it.
What's the allocation of Steem founders, investors, and then the community?
Steemit Inc. holds about 25% of the tokens, about 70 million Steem, and the rest. It's kind of top heavy. In the beginning, you could mine it. You can't mine Steem anymore, and so a lot of the guys that got there early, just like all the other crypto projects, have a lot of influence. But it's not impossible to either buy. You could buy in now and get a pretty sizable stake, for like a reasonable cost proposition. I was looking at some of like the top Steem power holders the other day, and about 50,000 Steem power gets you in the top 300 worldwide. So it's kind of top heavy, but you can still buy a significant stake for not that much.
So Larimer went on to do EOS. Why, and people are building on it, why would people build on like the version 1.0 of Larimer versus version, technically 3.0, I guess?
So the blockchain infrastructure, anyone could go build on EOS right now. I've talked to a lot of projects that have built on EOS and have looked at it. To get out of like the infrastructure phase is it's kind of like you're dragging it through the muck. It takes time. We saw when the EOS blockchain launched, it like shut down and had to relaunch. And so there's just a lot that happens at the infrastructure kind of layer until it matures. But I don't know of any other blockchains out there that have dozens of like fast functional apps like built on top and like already existing and running today. And the RAM is another thing to keep an eye on. So kind of the way to build a good blockchain app is to leverage the blockchain for as little as you can. And so that's kind of the model of Steem. We call Steem an application-specific blockchain, where it's specifically tailored for social and content-based apps, which is like 90% of the internet. But it's not an application general blockchain like Ethereum in EOS, where the whole smart contract, the whole thing runs on chain. Here, all these apps, they're just tapping into the Steem blockchain for some distributed content management and that autonomous token distribution, the token distribution that just happens that no one controls.
Where does most of the content get stored? Because tons of videos and
So there's text.
Space goes in storing that. So
Yeah, so the videos, DTube built it with IPFS, but then he kind of gave up on IPFS because it was causing some latency. And so the way to run a lean mean blockchain app on Steem is to serve as much up from a regular, server as possible, and then you just hit the blockchain for who owns what and who sent what to who. And so it's kind of like a hybrid kind of. It's like a half regular app, half website, half blockchain app.
What would you say the biggest competitor is when it comes to application-specific blockchains for content and media? Are there any?
I don't know of any, and I look at all this stuff. I mean, Waves just came out with you can do a meta token on top of Waves. I think the one thing that's really hurting Steem from like mass adoption and to hopefully get back in the top 10 is that meta token layer. If you could ICO on Steem just as effective or even more effective than on Ethereum, I think Steem becomes kind of the blockchain of choice unless someone comes and beats us. I think we have a head start.
What's the net inflation rate right now?
Right now it's about 9%. It's about 9%.
Year?
Yeah, a year.
That's not too bad.
Not too bad.
And that includes all like the tokens that get created for all the likes and comments and everything?
Yep.
Okay, and that's for the whole ecosystem, not just Steem. Steem it, that's for.
Yeah, the whole ecosystem. So the way that's distributed is 75% of that goes to the content creators, 15% of that goes to anyone that holds Steem power, and then the last 10% goes to the block producers. It's a delegated proof of stake system, so those block producers are voted in to they're voted into their positions of authority, where they are the ones that process the blocks, and the top 20. It's kind of like Monte Carlo, like skewed heavy, where anyone can be a block producer, but only the top 20 are the ones that get like 90% of the blocks. And so if you're a top 20 block producer on Steem, you earn 100,000 Steem a year, which right now is $40,000. But when Steem was more, it was a lot. It was a very lucrative kind of job.
Does the Steem power, does that play into the DPoS at all?
Yeah. So you can vote whoever you want based on your Steem power. And so if you have 1,000 Steem power, you're gonna have a little vote. If you have 1 million Steem power, you can really sway who is in the top 20 or not.
Steem power, I get more influence on my upvotes. I can vote. Do I also get any kind of like inflation? Is there any other benefit?
Yeah, you get 15% a year. And so essentially, if you're in Steem power, it's good because you're not going to get inflated away. If you hold all your holdings in Steem, you're going to get inflated away at 15%. You lose every year. The DPoS is, I think it's a pretty beautiful system because it kind of achieves consensus because it's a very lucrative job to be in the top 20. And so if anyone in the top 20 were to try to cheat and send their tokens to Bob instead of Alice, against the wishes of the blockchain, software would pick it up and they would get voted out immediately, and the blockchain would kind of carry on. And so that's why we haven't seen any issues with delegated proof of stake. And the guys that get voted into the top 20 are really guys that kind of grew up around the project. They're the developers. They built some of the apps like Steem Monsters. He holds the number 1 position. They built some of the wallets. They built the block explorers. They built the APIs in different languages. And so it's kind of a beautiful system where like the most respected guys get voted into the job that is to run the blockchain, essentially.
Okay, any more? Great.
Cool, thanks a lot. I know it's a lot to kind of cram in there, but
Where is
really
the best
appreciate
way
it.
that people want to find out more about Steem and Steemit? What should they be doing?
I think just hopping onto Steemit.com, getting an account, and really just diving in. I mean, everything that I kind of condensed into this little talk took me at least a year to learn. I'm still learning things about the Steem blockchain. There's a lot of intricacies in how it operates. So I think it's a pretty cool system.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Nathan. Everybody's dying out there. Thanks, everyone, for coming. So 2 pretty different presentations there, but I think that's kind of where we're going to sort of take it for this year because we've got a very diverse crowd here who comes every month. Very happy to get feedback from anyone and everyone on what you would like in future months, because we've only got a couple of future meetups planned out. Next month, I know that one of the presentations will be from Vault Wallet, which is a local company, into the, I guess, the identity space and the private key management space. We've got some very interesting developments. And then we've, I think for the month of March, we have one of the presentations from a little start called IBM. So we'll get through those, but we'll have other presentations those months too. So would love to hear any feedback on what you would like to hear and explore. So please spend a few more minutes. We've got this room until 9. Chat amongst yourselves, exchange information. If you want to stay a bit later, there's always the bar downstairs, and see you all next month. Make sure you check out the website, our blog, our Twitter account, our LinkedIn group, and get some t-shirts for David. Cheers.
So I got 10 larges and then 4 extra larges.
Yeah, I'll make it extra large. Yeah.
Well, no, these are large.
This is so interesting to like.
Here, take
Just a
I don't have a small warehouse.
Hey, Greg, try to strike the large.
Hey. What's that? Yeah, I'm trying to. Well, no, I have that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, we're down. And I will point you. So where are you? Set out. There's actually do that right. I'll info
yeah, we're right around the corner.
Seems kind of small.
I'll help you.
I didn't want to reschedule. Let's go.
I want to go back to